See me. So I think we have everyone.
All right. Well, wonderful. Good morning. Gaveling us or knocking us in. Hello, hello. So glad we are here for our policy subcommittee meeting on this Wednesday, October the 12th. If we can begin by our roll call, please. If we can share who is here. Starting with you, Gail, please.
Gail Harris, Board of Ed.
Thank you. Jason.
Jason Chang, Board of Ed.
Thank you. Lorna Thomas Farquharson, Board of Ed. Jessica.
Jessica Ritter, attorney with Shipman and Goodwin.
Thank you. Anne.
Yes, here. Come on in, Carol. We have some people who showed up to the meeting, didn't notice it was online. So they're, I'm sorry.
All right.
They can join by the meet.
Right.
Yes. And no, there's no paperwork to hand
There is
out
no
to-
paperwork.
No, there's no paperwork, and we're on the call right
I was not
now.
aware of any.
Yeah, tell them to
paperwork.
just go to that
Yeah.
link.
Just
Yeah.
go to the link.
Yep. Okay. Some people are going to be joining, but I think they came and they thought it was here. Although they must have just misread because there is a link to this meeting site.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, glad to have the participation, and thank you, Jessica, for announcing the name on your screen reads differently, but certainly we know that it is you, Jessica Ritter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does it have my son's name?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Have done that many a times as well. The virtual world we're in. So glad again we are here today. Thank you for your time and flexibility. We have gone through the roll call, and now we will have an executive session. And we know that this is a meeting that will be zoomed away into another room where we will convene. And the purpose for this executive session is discussion concerning an attorney-client communication regarding legal requirements related to public comment at Board of Education meetings. And so while we move to another virtual room, we thank you for your patience, and we will be back as soon as possible.
Okay, I'll be working on that virtual breakout room. Hang on.
We're coming back to the room, and I believe we are all here. All right. Well, thank you for your patience, those who are here. We have met for the executive session, and from that, what we are looking to do is to recommend for the meeting conduct policy to be brought forth for a first reading at our October 18th meeting. And so with that, we will have it as a first, recommending for that to be as a first reading, for it not to be voted on at the 18th, for as we know, votes take place after a second reading. But first off, want to make sure of those on the policy subcommittee meeting that we are in consensus with having the meeting conduct policy 8355 brought forth at the board meeting on October the 18th as a first reading. We're all on the same page with that?
Yes.
Thank you, Gail. And Jason, I know you're participating by phone. Jason?
And do you have Jason with you?
And you're on mute in case you're talking.
Sorry, Jason, can you say that again? I was on mute by mistake.
Yep, affirmative. That's a yes.
All right, thank you so much. And so with that, as we continue with old business, we again have already discussed the intent with policy 8355 to have that as a first reading at the October 18th meeting. And now we will review of updated policies due to changes in federal or state law and recommendations for first reading also at the October 18th Board of Education meeting. So passing it to you, Jessica, Attorney Ritter, please.
Yes, so thank you. So what we discussed at our September 29th policy subcommittee meeting is that we were going to bring forward certain policies for first reading on October 18th that are all mandated by law. And really all we did was we made recommendations, our firm made recommendations to take your existing policy and just update it to be in compliance with state and federal law. And the policies that we would be recommending that you bring forward for first reading on the 18th are all mandatory policies that a school district has. So I know what we discussed at the September 29th meeting is that we wanted to hold off on bringing forth the weighted grading and calculation of grade point averages. And then also we wanted to hold off on wellness. I know that the committee had discussed that. Are there any other policies listed here on the agenda that the committee would like to hold off on recommending for first reading on October 18th?
Can we hold off on the curriculum exemptions, please?
Yes, so certainly. So if we're going to hold off then on the curriculum exemptions, the wellness, and the weighted grading, then what I understand based on our conversation in our meeting on September 29th is that the subcommittee would be comfortable recommending the parent-teacher communication, the mandated changes that we recommended, the really technical changes to ensure state and federal law compliance. And so that's what most of these are on the agenda. So that would be for the parent-teacher communication, the parent and family engagement policy for Title I students, parental access to instructional material, and then homework. Is that something that would be ready to go forward?
Yes, I talked to Paul about that just to make sure that there was nothing more specific that, we may have been losing if we change the policy, but we are comfortable with that as well.
Okay, and then the transportation, suicide prevention and intervention, confidentiality and access to educational records, your Title IX policy on sex discrimination and sexual harassment, your 504 policy with respect to students in Title II of the ADA Act of 1990, and then the physical activity, undirected play, and student discipline. Again, just mostly technical changes to ensure state and federal law compliance.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. And we so appreciate the legal expertise and guidance of you and your team, Jessica, to ensure that we are in compliance with state statutes and regulations. And so we will have a full reading of these, first reading at our October 18th meeting. and we will continue to take it from there. Any questions, teammates? Gail or Jason, or comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I've got a comment or question. Can I, is it okay to speak now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, team, for, reviewing these after, reviewing the policies, really, glad that we're updating this, this roster of really important policies for the district. And, I found it a little bit, kind of like there's a crossroads, I think, between the curriculum exemption policy, which I know we're not going to discuss or present, but in combination with the Title IX, sexual harassment and discrimination piece, because on the one hand, we have a policy to prevent that harassment and discrimination from happening, but then we also permit the exemption for students not to receive that training. So I'm wondering if, in that, is that Title IX, sexual harassment discrimination policy, is that specific to policies regarding district staff and employees, or is it inclusive of lessons that might be taught to students about what harassment and discrimination is and what to do about it?
Well, so it's two separate things, Jason. So I think I understand your question. So the Title IX that you're making a recommendation for the first reading on October 18th, the one that we specifically looked at on September 29th and that will be going forward, is specific to students. Though this is going to be a long policy, there will be one coming down the road with respect to personnel. But what you're referring to is curricular exemptions, which is separate and distinct from the Title IX policy. State law does say that if a parent wants to opt their child out of sexual abuse and assault awareness and prevention program, they legally are able to do so. There are right now only 5 curricular exemptions that are legally permissible under the law. And so there's nothing that we can do about that. I completely appreciate and understand how it's difficult to reconcile the two. But that is why there is the need to do so.
Yeah.
So it's not a discretionary thing for the board. It is a legal requirement that parents be allowed to opt their children out of that. But that doesn't mean that their children aren't subject to either the protection of the Title IX policy or also that they have to comply with the Title IX policy. It's two very separate things.
I see. Okay, so it's inappropriate to have curriculum matters in that Title IX policy.
Correct, because it's two separate things. But just because I
Gotcha.
opt my child out of any curricular program about sexual abuse and assault awareness doesn't mean that that child is not entitled to the protections under the Title IX policy or is not also required to adhere to the requirements of that Title IX policy. Two separate things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments, Gail or Jason? All right. Hearing none, again, we look forward to having these proposed policies presented as a first reading at our upcoming October the 18th meeting. And with that, with there being no other questions or comments at this time, we are prepared to adjourn at 9:25. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
as well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good one.